Hedges. I'm the Managing Director of Windsor Hackforge. Very happy to have you all here with us tonight for our first event of the 2025 National Accessibility Week. Today we've got an excellent speaker, David Best. He is going to be sharing some excellent knowledge, expertise, and insights with us. If you've got questions for David as we go, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll read them out to him at a time when it is appropriate. So if your question is, oh man, your audio just cut out, I'll deal with that immediately. If your question is something a little bit less time sensitive, I'll ask it when we have a natural break in the programming. So we are going to be recording tonight's event, just a heads up for everybody on that. The video may be posted to our YouTube channel if David agrees that it can be. That's his call. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. David Best. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Thank you. This is great. I really appreciate your patience and the opportunity to be here. So this meeting is to kick off the week for the Canada National AccessAbility Awareness Week. And really what that's all about is across Canada, communities all across the country are taking this week to say, let's celebrate what we've done over the year. And in this week, we say, okay, those businesses, those local companies that took the time and effort to make changes, whether they did small things like braille menus or made spaces for wheelchairs, we like to show them the gratitude and congratulate them for their efforts. So that's what this week is all about. So it's all about building inclusion, community by community. And so our community, Windsor, is hopefully going to participate in this celebration. So here we are. And I'm going to try and kick it off because we have a number of things going on all week. So the question is, what does our local community have to contribute to our week? And to tell you the truth, I find it rather disappointing that we really don't have very many businesses that have stepped forward to say what they've done and what they're trying to do. Businesses in Windsor seem to be totally unaware of accessibility challenges and things they can do. And I'm hoping by next year we will maybe have more businesses involved. Even the city, I'm disappointed that we don't have a city representative to kick off this week for us. Obviously, they're too busy to participate, but we need to get our city more involved with the disability community if we're going to break this cycle of poverty. And the same with journalism and radio. I don't hear anything on the radio or in the news about Accessibility Week. So I'm not quite sure what we're celebrating here in Windsor, but I do want to point out two organizations that I believe have made a difference and are actual leaders in this whole area. So first of all, I want to thank Hackforge for giving us this platform, for giving us a voice to give us a chance to talk about the accessibility issues and to try and form a partnership with our community. And the second organization that I'd like to mention is Elevate. Elevate over the past year has demonstrated leadership by action. It's not just words. They actually have taken the effort to build right into their processes, the business processes, the accessibility standards. So every website they create has the accessibility standards and is compliant. So eventually we're going to get every website in Windsor, Essex fully compliant. Now, did I lose my focus? Yeah, okay, here we are. Ooh. Okay. So who should be participating in this thing? Well, everybody and anybody that's interested in making our community a prosperous community, making our community a leader in the Canadian landscape. Windsor has a lot of potential, and we need leaders that see that potential and will take action to join with us and to actually make changes so we can grow. So in this session, I'm going to be challenging the leaders to think about their motives and to think about how their organization is structured. Perception, is reality. Thinking that you want to be a leader is not necessarily being a leader. The question is, are you recognized as being a leader? So if we were to ask communities across Canada if Windsor is a recognized leader, I don't think we'd get much of a response at this point in time. So as changers, as change makers, I encourage you to think about how we can move forward and how we can work together. I want to have us to change our method or mode from awareness to actually leadership with action. Okay, what are the objectives? Well, the objectives in this place is to create a space for creativity, for collaboration, and for innovation. In the existing global landscape, there are two primary forces that shape our community. And that's the innovation and the human rights trends that we're going to look at. So during this session, I'm going to examine the organization's systemic barriers that limit community engagement and economic participation. And hopefully anybody that is a leader of a business will take note and see what their strategies are that are creating systemic barriers. So a community can only thrive if we're open, if we have an open dialogue. And of course, that requires accountability, transparency, and responsiveness. And quite often, it's the responsiveness that we're missing. So I encourage you to help me take a bold step in forming a transition that we can transition our community from a symbolic inclusion to true belonging. Okay. Okay, if you think you know a lot about disability, I encourage you at some point afterwards, go here and test your knowledge on that website. This website, you'll notice that I'm not using PowerPoint. I'm using an HTML tool that I've developed to help give presentations because HTML is accessible to everybody and PowerPoint is not. And also, there's resources here that you can use. And if you're interested in using it, there is help information here. Okay, my journey. I encourage you to check out my YouTube where I have my accessibility journey, the accessibility challenges from right through from school to work. And I encourage you to subscribe to my podcast if you're interested in learning more about practical accessibility insights. But the most important thing is stories. We really build relationships and get to know by story. So I'm hoping to build a community where we can share stories. And I'm going to start by giving you my story. So I was born in the city of Windsor. At the age of 5, I developed glaucoma. For the next 2 years, I was in and out of hospital. I missed a lot of school, so I spent 2 years in grade 1. When I turned 8 years old, it was decided that I should go to the school in Brantford, which is a residential school for blind and low vision children. And I spent the next 10 years there with limited contact with family and neighborhood friends. over that period, during the 10 years, I slowly lost more and more vision. And by the time I reached grade 10, it suddenly hit me that I could barely see anything. And it really struck me that I was having a hard time reading or even seeing anything right in front of my face. And it was a difficult time because when you're losing your vision, it's a very challenging thing. I had no one to talk to. I was frustrated with school. So what does a teenager do? They drop out. I dropped out of school. I went home, and my mother, like most mothers, said, well, get a job or go to a local high school. And she encouraged me to go to local high school. She set appointments up for about 3 or 4 high schools, and every one of them turned me down. They told me to go back to Brantford because they didn't want their insurance to go up with me there. However, I decided I can't do this. And my mother said, well, there's one more school. So she set up an appointment at Forster Collegiate. I went there, and when I walked in, they scared me. You can't know what it feels like when somebody accepts you, when somebody shows value in you. They wanted me to start right that day. They thought it was a great idea. They had all kinds of teachers willing to help. Of course, I said I would take a week to think about it because it was just overwhelming. But as I thought about it, the enthusiasm they showed was amazing. And so I said, I'm going to try it. So I went back to school. I graduated with grade 13 from Forster. The teachers were fantastic. I would never have gotten my chemistry, physics, and advanced math to allow me to go on to university. The students, I had more students volunteering to read and help with things than I could actually use. So the story there is, it's amazing what can happen if someone shows interest to help you and give you confidence. I went on to university, graduated with a software engineering degree, started my career with Air Canada in the microcomputer science development. And for the next 30 years, spent a turmoil career in IT that went all over the place. You didn't know what was changing from day to day. In 2012, I retired from IBM. And over the last decade, I've worked with small businesses and entrepreneurs in helping them understand digital communications and how the internet is a window into their business and how digital communications is so important in building their brand. So that's basically my story. And I hope that we can get more insights going on with our city so we can develop more relationships. So here we are, factors, okay. Okay. Structural challenges, present all kinds of problems. There's accessibility barriers, which is barriers, not only just using the internet or social media or reading your email, but there's also barriers in the physical. There's barriers in all kinds of things. And we need to understand what those barriers are in your organization. Skill training, I'm sure most organizations have employee onboarding and training. And I have to ask, does any of that include people with disabilities? Can that skill set be translated into their way of learning? And finally, attitudes of ableism is the biggest challenge we have, in that typically in society, we are so busy with our own world and so many things going on that the idea is that if you can't do it my way, then you can't do it at all. And so we need to look at these 3 things within your organization to understand how we can move forward. So so the question is, how does our leaders understand all of these kinds of barriers? As I said, perception is reality, and everybody's perception is different. My challenges are different from your challenges. It is, and it's my perception, and it's only my perception, that the city of Windsor does not accept people with sensory or physical disabilities in the downtown core. And my perception is that because I've had no accountability and no responsiveness from the city with regard to issues. Okay, so there's two global trends. There's the innovation trends and there's the human rights trends. Innovation really, is the vast network of joining all the internet, the devices for prosperity, economic growth. The human rights trends is for building education and culture. And our, a lot of companies have to look at the work-life style and what does that mean to their employees. And we need to be able to focus on both trends. And apparently, it seems to me in Windsor, we're very focused on the technology, but very little goes into the human rights, the civil rights. We have very little interest in those areas. And I can see that in our local media, where they will report on something like how wonderful it is to have traffic signals, and they forget about it. There's no investigation as to whether those things actually work. Do people actually use it? Also, it's amazing that more than 75% of companies have less than 50 employees, which means they fly under the AODA radar, and they're never challenged on their accessibility strategies. Also, it's interesting that in Canada, Statistics Canada has reported that Canada has lost productivity steadily over the last decade. And when you think that more than 80% of employment is in the service industry, you would think that more investment would go into the usability and the human needs of people rather than into the investment going into the hardware of AI and all of the business hardware that we need to. I'm sure that everybody has had problems in working with their computer. You lose a lot of productivity when things don't work the way they want. You can't get the support. You have to talk to a chatbot. There's a lot of human needs that we need to look at in the service industry. So not just in the technology area, but even in the food and retail areas, people that work in these areas need to have investment into their way of working and giving them the ability to work the way they can most productively. The problem we have with productivity in Canada is we have a lot of loss due to presenteeism that Stats Canada calls. Presenteeism is people are at work, but they're just not fully engaged. In 2007, the United Nations came up with the Charter of Rights for People with Disabilities. Canada became a signature in 2010. In 2005, Ontario took the lead to establish the AODA standards, and several provinces have followed. In 2019, we've had the Accessible Canada Act. So there's a lot of stuff going on in both the technology and in the human rights, but we have to pay attention to it as leaders. So what does this mean to our businesses? There's three basic models in our business world. There's the ones that are coercive to get profit, and there's those that are deceptive, for gaining power. And those that are businesses that are run on persuasion are those that build knowledge. Persuasion is a means of dialogue. It's engaging your clients. It's not just forcing them into buying your products, but it's actually taking time to know what they need and what they want. So you need to take a close look at your organization to see what your best practices are. You may have DEI practices, but do you have any supporting infrastructure that actually does something with those DEI practices? Do regulations force you to, turn a blind eye to business values? I can talk to business leaders and they can tell me all about their business values. But when it comes right down to it, a lot of those values are sacrificed because there are so many things going on that they don't take the time to build the supporting infrastructure. So how do you measure things like belonging and dignity and justice? And, I think a lot of people are sort of misled. There's a lot of myths out there. Sometimes people are misled by the quick and easy solution. Unfortunately, there's too many organizations in Essex that have swallowed the marketing strategy that if they subscribe to an AI overlay, they can plug a widget into their website and all of their accessibility strategy problems are gone. Well, the problem with that, it's not true. You're only creating more problems for your users. Secondly, you're not teaching yourself about accessibility. You're actually giving control over to a third party to control your marketing. So you really need to look at those things that come along. And if it's too easy, it probably is true that it's not workable. And the question is, who are your partners? Who do you engage with? Are you engaged with the disability community? I know we have organizations that are business organizations that talk about work fairs and work opportunities, but do they have partners? I mean, we have a number of very qualified disability service organizations, and they really need the business community to partner with them. There are big companies, to put this in real terms, there has been very big and successful companies in the past that have failed, and they failed due to arrogance and they failed due to system blindness. And two textbook case studies is Nortel. 25 years ago or so, Nortel was a very successful global company and they failed. The studies tell us because of system blindness. There was a lot of competition between management and departments didn't know what each other was doing. The other one was Blockbusters. For those who are old enough to know what video is on tapes, we used to be able to rent the videotapes. And they thought that digital videos would never take place. And well, what happened is they went out of business. Okay, so what we want to look at is in this session primarily is 4 basic strategies you need to look at. First strategy, the principle is dignity. And dignity is all about marketing with integrity. The second one is independence. And independence is a strategy that helps you build effective communications. The third one is integration. And integration is a practical strategy about valuing human engagement. And the last one is equality. And equality really is about stabilizing processes within your business. We don't have a pure democracy. We have a lot of government regulations that tie us down. So we need to follow these regulations. But regulations are important because they basically establish a norm in society. So the first thing that we do for our business is, the benefit we have is privacy. We can create a private business. We can do what we want. We have the second thing is freedom. We have the freedom to do what we want with that business. And third is motive. Most entrepreneurs are very highly motivated and you have to have a motive. Customers is what drives the supply and demand. Does your organization understand the difference between what the user needs and what the user wants? So customer needs are those basic things like water, shelter, education, all the very basic things. And the wants are those things that are over and above that give us a higher quality of life. We like our cars, we like our computers, we like all the fancy things. But none of these things help. You can have a brilliant idea, but if people don't catch your dream, they're not going to buy into it. And I can tell you that one example, I can walk into a fast food restaurant, and today they've installed in a lot of them now is these touch order boards. So I can go over and touch the board and it goes crazy and I can't do anything with it. So I can go to the counter and ask the server for help, but the server will say, I'm working alone tonight. I can't help you. I haven't got time. So the company has met my wants for food, but they didn't meet my needs for actually ordering the food. Okay.
So in that situation, will they take your order at the counter?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, if I go to the counter and if the person is working alone, they often don't have the time.
So they won't even like punch your order into the
No,
machine
they
at the
won't.
counter like
No.
usual?
No, they quite often they will not.
That's easy.
Yeah. So, here again, busy, busy, busy. Everybody's busy. Okay. I'm going to move to goals. Here we go. So there's 4 steps. We need to establish our goals. Okay, what is your goals? Well, you need to your goals should determine, how you drive innovation. Okay, innovation back in the 1900s, innovation was actually driven by the need. So everybody uses a phone today, but it was invented for hearing. In early 1970s, Vincent Cerf, who was deaf, working for the military research center, sent the first text message. Him and his wife were both deaf, and so he developed a method where they could communicate over ARPA, which is our internet predecessor. So there's lots of things that we really take it granted for today. The most outstanding is Apple. 15, 20 years ago, they came out with the Apple phone. And right off the bat, they built right into it a screen reader. And we have very few companies that do that today. Even today, I can walk into an Apple store, pick a product up, and start using it. I don't have to install or anything. What's it? Okay, what are barriers? I think we need to take time to assess what barriers are in our organizations. And that's, I'm not going to go through them all because I think they're all familiar with you. Attitudes, information, communications, the physical, and a very important one is systemic. We have these processes and policies, but quite often the systemic barriers is what stops us in our tracks. And of course, you know what disabilities are. There's 5 categories: vision, hearing, cognitive, physical, and temporary. So you may not realize it, but quite often you're using features that were designed for people with disabilities, such as captioning. When you're in a quiet place like a library or you're in a bus, you watch captioning. Same with in a car driving, you'll listen to audio, instead of reading. So everybody benefits from it. Okay, so the first strategy that I want to focus on is dignity. What is dignity? Well, basically, dignity is power. It's how you feel. People will forget what you said, what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Dignity. So what is your strategy? So your dignity strategy needs to go from information to knowledge. How do you get people to go from information to really understanding? So the first thing we need to do is understand what is the digital divide? What are the barriers? So the barriers that we can look at is the delivery. How is the message being delivered? Are biased attitudes being used? How do people access? And of course, it comes down to design. Did you even take time to design it? So there's 3 steps to your design process. Receiving. Can I receive the message? How are you sending that message out? There's millions of signals going through this room. We don't hear the cell phone signals, the TV signals, because we're not tuned to it. Our device isn't tuned to it. So we don't even receive it. You put a poster up on the post outside on the street, I won't perceive that. The second step is, the first step is receiving. The second step is perceiving. So do I actually perceive the message? I can receive it. You can send me an email, but do I perceive it? Is it pictures? Then I won't perceive it. So you need to consider visual, audio, and tactile. And the final step is understanding. Do people understand your message? And if they understand it, you've just created knowledge, you've just created power. And people like to be in power. So the first thing is accountability. Your strategy has to make sure you have feedback mechanisms. You can't be accountable unless people can talk to you. Secondly is transparency. Be transparent about what you're doing. You can't satisfy everybody's needs, but you need to be transparent about your strategy, what you're attempting, and what you are unable to do. And responsiveness. Responsiveness is the biggest barrier we have in our local community in Windsor because we get very little response to our requests. I can submit a problem in our Windsor 311 database. I can get a ticket created and then I hear nothing about it. Never, ever again. It goes into a black hole. Did I do that right? Yes. Yes, here we go. Okay, number 2. The next one is independence. So what is your strategy for creating independence among your customers? Independence doesn't mean working all by yourself. It means enabling people. So usability is enabling. And the barrier you need to cross, you need to build a bridge between accessibility to usability. And to understand what is that bridge, what are the barriers between accessibility and usability, we need to look at the barriers. So we consider the divide, and then we consider the barriers. How do we design? Okay, so of course, design standards. We got to consider government regulations because not just Ontario, but you need to, if you global, you need to know US and European standards. You need to understand perceptions, perceptions of what you're delivering. It's not necessarily the perception I have what I'm receiving. And there's a number of interfaces that you need to consider. So everything from graphic user interface for mouse, keyboard interface, menu driven, which is a lot of kiosks, voice recognition, which is people talk to dictate letters, or screen readers will translate text to speech. The natural language one is the AI one, where you can actually talk to it and it will respond to you. So all these interfaces are ones that you need to consider in your design strategy. So your design strategy needs to think about the audio, the visual, and the tactile. Okay, user interfaces. Okay, we did. Okay, here's the list of user interfaces. So I went through that. Okay. Okay, so that's independence. Okay. Okay, the next one is integration. Now, this is a big one because a lot of organizations get bogged down with processes and procedures. So the bridge you want to build is between passive and active. And active is inclusive. So if you want to be inclusive, you have to make your customers, your employees, active participants. The digital divide will be barriers like where are we? Inclusive dialogue. So is the dialogue in your organization inclusive? Are people actually participating? So, if I came to a meeting, I came to an AGM meeting or something, and you passed around a piece of paper and you said, we're going to vote. And you write on there, yes or no. You vote yes for this or no for that. Well, you automatically cut me out. So you say, oh, that's okay. We accommodate you. Someone will sign it for you. So I get someone to put my no or yes on it and submit it. I'm a passive participant. I'm not fully integrated. I'm being accommodated. If I go to your website and you have a PDF document, a report, and I can't read it, I call you and say, I need an accessible format. And, oh, okay, we'll create one. 2 or 3 weeks later, you send me an accessible format. You've tolerated me, basically. You accepted me, but that's not inclusion. Integration, full integration means you fully accept people as they are. And you need to consider the barriers that will stop you from doing that. And, it could be different. What innovation do you need to use? What's the affordability? What's the availability? So you need to consider the barriers that do that. So your design process needs to go right back to all your stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? Who are your stakeholders? Who are your partners? And you got to bring them together at the design level. That's where things happen. And I'm disappointed in that we don't have much of the way of partnerships with disability service groups and local businesses. And I'm really happy to see, I think it's on Wednesday noon, we're having a group, I think it's the Black Entrepreneurs, will be talking about accessibility. And it's really important that we get our entrepreneurs talking about that. And I would like to see more of that because disability does not restrict itself to race, to color, to age, to prosperity, income. Disability is going to hit everybody. We're all getting older and everybody will be hit with some kind of limitation. Also, I think later in the week, the Assistive Living Services of Ontario is hosting a group getting leaders together to talk about creating a community hub where we can build a partnership and start using our combined efforts to develop innovations. So the question is, in your organization, do customers and employees feel fully engaged? Okay, how do you do that? How do you evaluate your strategy? So you need to look at the technical side and you need to look at the user experience side. So the first evaluation is the hardware you're using. Things like wireless, miniaturization, and cloud-based. So these 3 things are what really have a huge impact on my life. I can take my iPhone and I have all kinds of GPS and service support apps that I can use. So so the technology is there. The experience that you need to measure is the performance of that equipment, the security of that equipment, and the accessibility of that equipment. So what is the user experience when you evaluate your tools? So the accessibility, how do you measure accessibility? The technical side is perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. And for those that are familiar with website development, they'll know that these are the 4 core principles of the W3C, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that's the standard you follow. So what's the user experience? How do you measure that? Well, the user experience is measured through ubiquitous. How quick and easy is it to access? I pick up my phone and it comes alive right away. Intuitive. How intuitive is your product? Can I understand when I start using it, or is there complicated pages that I have to go through to try and figure out? And adaptable. How adaptable is it? Is the product, and you need to measure, determine it's visually adaptable, it's audibly adaptable, or maybe tactile adaptable. So you need to measure those things. And the other one is, how do you measure usability? Well, from the technical side, you measure it through dignity, independence, integration, and equality, which is your 4 strategies. So these are the policies and the technical standards that you use to develop it. Your user experience, you have to go out and measure your user experience. It's one thing to have product, but if you don't know how your users are using it, so you measure it according to effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. How satisfied are your users? You know, they say a satisfied user is the best marketing tool you can have. And when I'm happy with a website, people know about it. So security. How do you measure security? Well, you measure it through performance. How stable, how consistent, and how fast is the access? And you measure the user performance through privacy. Do people feel safe? Is it risk-free? And is it high-quality delivery? Those are things that people look for when they're looking for a good product and service. Okay, the last one is equality, which is a really challenging strategy to develop. And it really takes time and effort. So what is equality? Well, equality really is going from chaos to stability, and stability is satisfaction. So when you have a stable work environment, not only the employees, but your customers are happy, they're satisfied. So you got to consider, what is the digital divide? Well, the digital divide, of course, is going from chaos to stability. What are the barriers? So when you're looking at this particular thing, we need to consider, what are the barriers that you have? You know, you can't solve a problem unless you know what the problem is. You can't create a solution until you have the problem. So if you don't have an accessibility problem, you're not going to create a solution. So you need to understand, what is collaborative processes? You know, top-down innovation. What's top-down innovation? Well, quite often our leaders think they know what we need, so they go and develop the strategies, but really it should be grassroots up. Leaders should be listening to people. I had an experience where I went onto the Windsor website, and they have a carousel on the home page, and I notified the city of Windsor that it's not screen reader usable. And I was told that it meets certification. It is a compliant website, so they don't need to do anything. In other words, they told me to go away and not bother them. So, you know, here again, attitude, policies, and behavior. So we may have policies, but what's the behavior? Here we go. And we go back to design. So what is your design strategy? You know, I think the biggest problem with a lot of our challenges with business in our local area is the gap between leadership understanding of accessibility and the management implementation of that accessibility. I talk to a lot of leaders that tell me they have business values, they're inclusive, and they believe they're doing the right thing. But the right thing is not necessarily the right, the thing to do. I can talk to management and they'll tell me, we're trying to do things right, but we don't have the resources. We don't have the skill. We don't have the training. We need to we need to get more. We need to get more resources in our department. We need to get more training so I understand how to solve the problems. And we need to close that gap between the leadership understanding and the management, because we are deceiving ourselves. We are creating an environment within our business where we think we're doing the right thing, but things are not being done the right way. And here again, personally, my own personal perceptions and experience is that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the city of Windsor announced a city revitalization project for downtown Windsor. Well, for the last 2 years, I've been trying to get them to give me a copy of the impact study on disability. Did they do an impact disability study on the downtown Windsor revitalization? Do they know what the needs are? The second thing I cannot get an answer to is stakeholders. Who's my stakeholder? If you look at the project, there's a dozen or more stakeholders, and not one of them represent physical or sensory disabilities. And finally, how much money in the budget? There's something like a $30 million budget to revitalize downtown Windsor. And I have no idea how much money in that budget is allocated to accessibility. And sadly, I think that we need to really understand these challenges, and I'm disappointed in our investigative journalism. We need to get our local journalist students and people more interested in understanding what these problems are. I'm sure that the city of Windsor means well. I'm sure that they're trying to develop an environment downtown. But I can tell you, it's not fun walking down Olette Avenue with a white cane. Okay, finally, here we go. So your strategy to be successful needs to be purposeful. Purposeful means profitability, because every customer likes a purposeful company. They like one that they can trust. They like one that they know is doing things right. Innovating is profitable, because when you innovate, you not only solve a problem for a specific group of people, you solve an issue for everybody. When you make the websites accessible and easy for me to use, you're actually making it very easy for everybody else to use. Okay. And finally, your business values, business adaptability is really all about investment. So do you consider, accessibility an investment or a business cost? So it's really important to build in at the beginning so you can adapt, because things change year to year. So your website is accessible today, but maybe next year it's not. But it'll be easy to adapt if it's designed with the standards. However, it's very costly to rewrite it and to transform into a new website. Okay, and I want to thank you for your attention, and I want to thank you, Lauren, for Hackforge giving us this opportunity. And I look forward to repeating it next year, but hopefully with a lot more business partners participating. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was great. Before we tie things up today, does anybody have any questions for David? If you are joining us online and would like to ask a question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask it out loud. If you're in the room, you can only ask your question through chat.
You chat?
While everybody is
Yeah.
absorbing and deciding whether or not they do have a question for David, I'm just going to give a quick overview of some of the other events that we've got coming up this week. David mentioned a few of them during his talk, which was awesome. So tomorrow night from 6 until 8 p.m., we have an online event focused on accessible reading technology. We will have a member of CELA, which is the Center for Equitable Library Access, who will be here virtually, to talk about the production and use and future of audiobooks, audio magazines, and other similar alternative reading materials. I'm very excited about this one. I listen to a ton of audiobooks because I can't read an actual book while doing the dishes. So I look forward to hearing a little bit more about what's going on with the future of that. I think we're going to be having some conversation in that one as well about what makes an audiobook accessible or not, because there are just the fact that it is audio and a book does not mean it's accessible, apparently. So we'll see what that means. And right now, CELA is in the process of moving away from CDs. So right now, a lot of folks still use, those shiny circles that kids these days don't know what they are, still listen to their audiobooks on those. And there is some displeasure with that in the community of library users. So it'll be interesting to hear a bit more about it. As David mentioned, on Wednesday, the 28th, from noon until 1 p.m., we're having calling it a labor market interventions roundtable. So this is an event with a huge number of partners for it. And huge is actually not that many, but it's a lot if we're talking about, groups that Windsor usually works with. So we've got the AISH Community Foundation for Black Canadians with Disability. We've got SETSI, which is Social Economy Through Social Inclusion. They are like a funding group. And the Canadian Centre for Nonprofit Digital Resilience. So this group is going to be coming together virtually to talk about how we can increase the connections between people with disabilities and opportunities in the Canadian tech ecosystem. So that'll be really interesting to hear where that conversation goes. Then on the Thursday afternoon from 3:30 to 5, we've got Samer from Deaf Assistant, who is going to be doing an event with us related to the new Accessibility Standards Canada Accessible and Equitable AI standard, I suppose. So how we can make sure that AI is not taking advantage of anyone, how we can make sure that it is serving everyone as much as possible, at least. That leads directly into Friday morning's program, which runs from 11 until 12:30. This features Dr. Yuda Trevenaris, who is the chair of the Accessibility Standards Committee that wrote this standard. So she is internationally recognized in the field of equitable AI, and this is a super cool speaker to have presenting for free for Hackforge. So I highly, highly recommend tuning in for this event if you can make it. Again, that is 11 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. online via Zoom. And then on Saturday, we're closing things out with a disability Pride workshop, informed and committed actions toward undoing ableism. So this is being led by Evelina Beshuska. She ran a similar event for us last year, and it was fantastic. Everyone who was there really got a lot out of this session. Similar to what David was talking about tonight, it's getting folks to think about accessibility a little bit more and consider how things that we use every day that we don't consider to be accessibility devices, look at where they started from. And in many cases, you're going to see that they actually were accessibility aids back in those days. So check that one out as well. That runs from 3 until 5 p.m. on Saturday. All of these events are free, and you can get the information about all of them on our website at hackf.org/events. For anyone joining online, I will put that link, bam, into the chat for you there. Very cool. All right, so questions for David?
Everybody's overwhelmed.
Everybody's overwhelmed. There's a lot of stuff there, David. You have a lot of thoughts. You have a lot of stuff to say.
I do.
And it's, it's great. It's good to hear. It's wild to hear some of it, that restaurants would rather turn you away. Yeah. I mean, I get it. The person, quote unquote, turning you away is, some high school kid making minimum wage who doesn't benefit whether or not you order food. But it's still not right, not fair to you. So that is lame.
No, and that's part of our productivity problem in Canada is, they installed those kind of technologies, but they don't really look at what the server needs. What kind of support can they give the server behind the counter? We need to think about what the human need is.
Oh man, are you kidding? It's capitalism. North America doesn't think about the human needs at all. They just think about what else do we need to do? How much more money can we squeeze out of you? How much more productivity can we squeeze out of everybody? That's all it is.
But we're going to change that. Windsor's going to be a leader. I really think that we have a lot of good technologists in Windsor. And we just need to somehow partner together and bring things together because without working together, without those partnerships, everything is just chaos. And we'll always have, according to Stats Canada, Windsor's considered the poverty capital of Canada. And I don't think that's actually 100% true, but we've been on that scale for so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested to know kind of how they ranked that. So
yeah,
I'm gonna look up that stats. That's an interesting.
Well, the problem is we're so dependent on the car industry.
Mm-hmm.
That's our problem. We're a one-horse cart town. If we could expand or diversify our talents, we would not have the problem of poverty every time the car shut down.
Step one, we need to get more people voting and voting appropriately. Man.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if we got a change in the administration of this city?
Oh boy.
One can only hope. Wait, I don't know your politics. Do you support the Drudelkins? You can feel like it's all right. Drew? No.
I think from my comments, you know how I feel.
Yeah, no, that's wild though that you told them, David, that you cannot use their website.
Yeah.
And their response was, it passes the tests, go away.
Yeah, but did they ever give you any information on what tests they're basing their interesting?
No, they told me, I think they have a third-party developer website, so they have to go with whatever their third party tells them. You see, and this is one of the problems when you're a small company, you hire another company to do a lot of work, whether it's accounting or legal or website development. That website developer tells you, oh, you need this. And if you don't know any difference, you'll say, okay, I'll take that. And your website developer says, okay, it's compliant. And then I come along and say, I can't use it. Well, what do you say? Well, my developer said it was compliant.
Is there any way that we could pressure and show the city of Windsor that their website is?
I wish we could. And that's why I wish we had more partners. Our disability community does not have a voice in this city. The voice has been muted. So what we need to do is give the community a voice because we want the disability community to fight for themselves. We want alliances. We want partners to partner and support us. But the charge has to be taken by the disability community.
They have a section on the website about accessibility. But it's basically just links about we've promised to do things in the past. By the way, if you want to get in touch, accessibility at citywindsor.ca.
I challenge anybody, if you send an email to accessibility, whatever it is, what is it, the accessibility, what is it? The WAC, the Web Accessibility Awareness Committee. You send an email there, I can almost guarantee you will not get a response.
Is that for the city of Windsor?
Yes, the city of Windsor. The city of every city, every municipality in Ontario, all 444 have to by mandate have a committee. So the city of Windsor has an accessibility committee. There's people on the committee that have various types of disabilities that represent the community. But it's a checkbox. The city says, okay, we've met our mandate. We have a committee. What do? Nobody knows what they do. They never engage the community in dialogue. When is the last time the city has ever come to the disability community to do an impact study?
Mm.
Would you be interested in being on this committee?
No. I'm on the Ontario Standards Advisory Council, and we have enough of our own battles to get the Ontario government to hear us.
Right, sure.
So I found a page on the website that actually is all about website accessibility. Below it is a list of tools built into this website, as well as some popular tools available within standard browsers to assist with optimal access to our information.
Okay, but question.
Yeah.
Okay, so for that, if they say, oh, we have tools and stuff available.
Yeah.
But if you're a person and you're trying to look at their website and you already don't have those tools, how are you going to find those tools?
Okay, who's looking for the tools?
So this,
The owner, the business owner?
No, so on the city of Windsor, is it the Windsor?
this is
Oh,
the City of Windsor
Windsor, yeah.
website. They
Okay.
have a page that talks about all of the
Oh,
accessibility features built into their website.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
that's there. That everybody can write a policy. I'm sure your organization has a DEI policy, but if I challenged you on it, I bet I could find that, there's problems because there's no support behind it. So the city of Windsor has a thing right on the website of the tools. They have a policy of what the guidelines are. But I bet you no business has ever read those guidelines, and the city has probably never challenged any business on those guidelines.
Well, it's funny the things that they say that they've done to make their website accessible.
Yeah.
They've got text resizing, high contrast, so you can switch it
Okay.
to high contrast mode, a simplified view.
Yeah,
And to do that, you have to click on the print friendly icon.
yeah.
You can use Google Translate, you can use Windows Magnifier, and you can use Windows Narrator. So none of those are actually, or very few of those are actually things built into the website themselves.
None of those
It's all
things,
relying on-
none of those things impact accessibility for screen reader users.
Interesting. So if you were to open print friendly view, can your screen reader read that?
What is it?
Print friendly view.
I don't know what that
They
is.
call it simplified view. So it says.
Oh, yeah.
It's like reading mode in most browsers.
Mhm.
But the screen reader doesn't need that. So the question is, why buy a product when your computer can already do that? Your browser allows you to expand and to enlarge. If the website is responsive, it will move elements around. So those features are, what are those features? I mean, they're basically talking about what the browser offers. That has nothing to do with their website.
Yeah, that is pretty much what all of this is. I can't figure out, even though the print friendly icon next to the header unclutters the page, I can't figure out what they're talking about
No, I
for
don't
that.
I don't know.
I don't see anything.
It
about
looks
it.
good.
Hmm.
It's impressive. No, but that's what I mean. We have, I could go on to the Windsor, and Google a business and pick out any business in the city. And I can probably find they have a DEI policy that says we're inclusive. But if I tried to access a document or something, I bet I couldn't get it. So we need to get people, we need to get businesses and the city especially to understand saying one thing, but doing it is totally different.
I got a question about, you said you couldn't access PDFs.
Right.
Isn't there a PDF to, I don't know what file type would you require?
No, you can make PDF documents accessible. It takes some training. You can use Microsoft Word and you can use PDF, but unfortunately, what a lot of people do with PDF documents is they will create a report in their document writer, whatever they use to produce this document, and then they take a picture of it and they put it in PDF. So what PDF really is just a picture of the document. And screen readers can't use that because it's text. So to get around that, AI has as I showed you, my screen reader can tell me pictures, but my screen reader can also read PDFs. That of course, it depends on the font. If it's handwriting, no way, I can't read it. But AI is a tremendous advantage today in helping us solve those problems. But PDF is no harder to learn. I mean, your staff have to learn a lot of other things. They have to learn how to use the computer, how to use the human resources, application. So why shouldn't they learn how to make PDF documents accessible? Because it's not that hard. And if they learn that, that's a skill. That's a skill they can take with them wherever they go. And it's it's something where I don't have to bug you for an accessible copy.
So are there other file formats that aren't accessible? Like what about Excel sheets?
Most Microsoft products are pretty good. Microsoft has done a lot of work in making accessible features in them. Excel spreadsheets is accessible, but like anything, you almost have to go to university to learn how to use it. So Microsoft, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they've done a lot of work with PowerPoint as well. Unfortunately, I can view a PowerPoint presentation, but I can't create one. It's just far too complicated because I end up putting objects on top of objects and I can't shift them around. So they have some work to do there. But mostly Microsoft products are very good. Even these cloud sharing things like Google Docs, OneDrive, Dropbox, a lot of companies use those, and I end up using them all because everybody uses something different.
Yeah.
But they are accessible with the disclaimer that it takes a lot of time and effort to learn the shortcut keys. You know how many hundreds of shortcut keys I need to learn just to use? So it takes a lot of time and effort.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, David. It was great having you join us. I'm glad you were able to be here. I look forward to getting your input on some of the other events that we've got coming up this week as well. And I think we're going to end it there. So thank you, everyone who joined us online and those folks who joined us in person. We appreciate you as well. I am going to end the stream now. Bye.